Coming up on FYI.
Here, on the small island of Alderney, which is part of the Channel Islands, changes in the environment are having a direct impact on the local wildlife.
Most of the traditional gum that you'll see on the supermarket shelves is actually plastic-based. It's just not currently made very clear to consumers and isn't clearly labelled on the packets.
Does ditching fast fashion mean you're going to look a bit rubbish?
Absolutely not. For example, I am wearing a full second-hand outfit today and personally I feel like I look alright.
This is FYI, bringing you all the latest news that matters to you. First up, we've got a special report from the Channel Island of Alderney, where Huey's been finding out how wildlife is being impacted by our modern world.
The world's biodiversity is facing a crisis. Climate change, habitat loss, and pollution are threatening species globally. But the effects can also be seen much closer to home. Here, on the small island of Alderney, which is part of the Channel Islands, changes in the environment are having a direct impact on the local wildlife. So, I've come to see for myself how the island's biodiversity is being affected. We're starting with Britain's biggest seabird, the gannet. Alderney is famous for its gannet colony, which is home to thousands of birds. These birds are expert fishers, but as ocean temperatures rise, they're having to travel further to find food.
So this is our last commercial fishing boat.
To tell me more is Alex, a scientist from the Alderney Wildlife Trust, who's been studying these shores for years and is tracking how climate change and people are transforming the island's wildlife. He's taken me out to see the local gannet colony.
I'll tell you what, one of the best places to dive
So we're surrounded by thousands of gannets here. What sort of challenges do these guys face?
As sea temperatures get warmer, fish, they're moving further north, and that means the gannets have to travel further and further to find them. We even had one gannet which flew all the way to Norway and back on a round trip. Also, with things like increasing storm events, it's making it more difficult for them to survive on their nests.
And I've heard their nests are actually made out of plastic. How does that happen?
They've got to build big nests, and they like to grab things like seaweed naturally for those nests. Problem is, to a gannet, plastic actually looks like a great nesting material as well. And every year we might lose, between 10 and even 50 gannets to getting entangled on this colony behind us. There is some hope soon to try and do some initiatives to remove some of that plastic from the stacks. If they eat it, that can get entangled in their stomach. But the worst one for gannets is actually getting entangled in it themselves.
And it's not just plastic pollution harming the island's wildlife. Sea temperatures in the Channel Islands have increased by 1.7 degrees Celsius since 1980, and that's bringing new species to Alderney's shores, which can have a big impact on local biodiversity.
We have a lot of crabs here on Alderney, and actually it's our main fishery. Lots of the fishermen go and they hunt for edible crabs. But in the last few years, we've had a new species arrive, and they're now starting to replace the edible crabs and the other native species like green shore crabs. 10 years ago, you would have gone out, you wouldn't have seen a single furrowed crab, but now you'll go out there and you'll find 10 furrowed crabs under every single rock. It's really alarming, and it's just a complete symptom of climate change. This is happening in the Channel Islands now, but you can guarantee that in the next year, it'll be happening all over the UK.
And why is it a problem that invasive species are coming to the islands?
They can then take over habitats or outcompete native species, and it means that overall our biodiversity will go down. This can have really bad impacts on the ecosystem as a whole.
What would you say is the best way that we can prevent warming seas?
Try and be as green as possible, cycle or walk instead of driving to work, take the bus or the train. What you can also do is you can campaign. So you can write to your local MP or your local councillor. All those things, they really help.
Alderney is seeing firsthand the effects of climate change. But with scientists like Alex monitoring these changes, the island is fighting back and trying to protect its biodiversity for future generations.
Now, from plastics in our oceans to plastic in our bodies. Loads of people chew gum, but did you know that lots of popular brands of chewing gum contain plastic? The same kind of plastic found in car tyres or carrier bags. Otherwise known as man-made polymers, the plastic gives chewing gum its elastic property, and it is legally allowed to be used. But according to research from Queen's University Belfast, a single piece of plastic-based chewing gum can release more than 250,000 microplastics into a person's saliva in just 1 hour. We got in touch with the International Chewing Gum Association to see what they make of these findings, and they said,
all ingredients in chewing gum base must be food grade and meet rigorous safety standards. They do not dissolve when chewed and are not absorbed even if swallowed. The study did not measure micro or nanoplastics released from chewing gum in a scientifically validated way. The study may inform future research, but it does not provide grounds for firm conclusions.
It's not known what the long-term health impacts of microplastics might be, but lots of people are worried about them. A new campaign supported by the youth movement, Kids Against Plastic, is calling for chewing gum companies to clearly label their gum so that customers know whether they contain plastic. And ultimately, they want to see a ban of plastic-based gum in the UK. We got hold of Amy Meek from Kids Against Plastic to tell us more.
Most of the traditional gum that you'll see on the supermarket shelves is actually plastic-based. It's just not currently made very clear to consumers and isn't clearly labelled on the packets. Now, there are plant-based gum alternatives out there, and these are also biodegradable and over time will hopefully help to reduce the amount of plastic gum litter that we're seeing on pavements. But I think everyone's pretty aware now of the fact that plastic in our environment isn't really a good thing. It persists for a long time and it can pollute the places that we live in, and so obviously the less plastic we're producing, the better. Plastic production is still set to increase in coming years, despite the health, environmental and climate risks associated with plastic production and consumption. World leaders need to take better responsibility for this problem.
Well, we got in touch with the UK government's Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs to ask for a response to the campaign, and they said,
there are no plans to ban any forms of chewing gum. The Food Standards Agency's independent scientific advisors are considering microplastics in food at present, and based on their findings or new evidence, the agency will consider its next steps. We encourage all food businesses to look at the steps they can take to reduce the environmental impact of their products.
A cat and her 2 kittens were found abandoned in the toilets in St Pancras train station in London. They were left in an unsuitable backpack, without the right air holes, and the mum was said to be hot and distressed. It was lucky they were found when they were. The cats brightened the days of station staff, and the British Transport Police then took them to the Ginger Cat House Rescue in Surrey, where they are now being looked after. The rescue centre volunteers call them the Railway Children and have named them Victoria, Paddington and Kensington, which are train stations in London. Sadly, cats being abandoned like this isn't unusual. The charity Cats Protection reported that the number of abandoned cats and kittens in the UK has been massively increasing over the last few years, with a 34% rise in 2024 alone. Charities think this is partly down to the rising cost of living and the expense of looking after a pet. For now, Victoria, Paddy and Kenny are doing well, but like the tens of thousands of other cats in rescue centres across the country, they're waiting for a new home, which is why charities are urging people to adopt a pet rather than buy one. Now, this month is 2nd 10th September, when we are encouraged by the charity Oxfam to take a stand against cheap high street clothing and go for second-hand clothes instead. But what is the problem with cheap fashion? Maya's got more info.
Let's be honest, we all love to look our best. And we all have our own different types of style. And this definitely isn't mine. That's more like it. But have you ever stopped and thought about what you wear and what damage it can be causing to the environment? Well, here's a few facts I found out. In the UK, we buy around £60 billion worth of clothes every year, and that's more than any other country in Europe. According to a recent survey, the average person owns 76 items of clothing, but throws away about 6 items every month. And right now, less than 1% of the material we chuck out is recycled into new garments. Let's face it, we can't escape adverts for fashion and deals from clothes shops online, but the main reason we buy so many clothes has got to be the incredibly low prices. Take a look at this t-shirt, for example, and guess how much I paid for it. Was it £20, £10, or £2? Well, the answer is £2. It sounds like a bargain, and fast fashion, as it's often called, does help to make clothes affordable for everyone. But you should be really careful when clothes are this cheap, as it can mean they're of poor quality and they won't last long. The best advice is to always check out how your clothes have been made. To find out more about this, I'm going to ask for some help, and I know just the person. Izzy Manuel is an expert on sustainable fashion. Hi Izzy, thanks for talking to me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
So, we all love a good deal, right? But should we be wary of things like my £2 t-shirt?
I think when it comes to products that are that cheap, we have to think about how they're made and who they're made by. So some clothing stores are sustainable and are ethical, but sadly not all of them are. And when something is that cheap, often the garment workers are the ones that have to pay for that, which means that they're the ones that are working in unethical conditions. They may not be paid a living wage. And actually there's an estimation that only 2% of garment workers worldwide actually paid living wages.
And what about the cost to the environment of fast fashion? Is that a problem?
I think this is something that's not really talked about that often, but fast fashion is actually so detrimental to the environment. So for example, for a single pair of jeans, it actually requires 10,000 litres of water to make them, which is equivalent to 125 full bathtubs worth of water. And I think when you think about the chemicals involved in processing of garments, whether that's dyeing, washing, cleaning, all of that adds up, and often this water and this toxic waste ends up in rivers, which is obviously really unsustainable.
So what can we do about all of this? Well, one obvious solution is to just buy fewer clothes. It saves you money and it helps the environment. The truth is that too many of us are buying new outfits, knowing that we'll probably only wear them a few times before we throw them away. But does ditching fast fashion mean you're going to look a bit rubbish?
Absolutely not. For example, I am wearing a full second-hand outfit today, and personally I feel like I look alright. Just because you don't buy fast fashion anymore doesn't mean that you don't have to look cool, doesn't mean you won't look trendy, and there are so many ways around that. For example, you can swap with your friends, you can buy second-hand, you can go to charity shops. All these things can still create a wardrobe that you love that isn't as impactful on the environment.
One other top tip is that when you put your clothes in the washing machine, try to use a lower temperature. It helps your clothes to last longer and reduces the amount of microplastics that are released from fabrics like polyester or nylon. Izzy, what else can we do to help tackle the problem?
I think one of the things that we could definitely do more is actually learn to repair our clothes, do small alterations. For example, do you actually know how to use a sewing kit? It's actually the best thing ever. And it's a great way to maintain our clothes, to fix small holes, and it means it keeps up in our wardrobes for longer.
Thank you, Izzy. That's brilliant advice.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope it was helpful.
So what have I learned? Well, it is possible to look great without it having to cost the earth. And instead of fast fashion, maybe the answer is to get fashion that lasts.
That's it from us, but we'll see you next time for more of the news that matters to you. Bye!